Holy moly! That is the real blasphemy. I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
And this is Religiousuicide by the band ONSLAUGHT.
This is for the extreme underground.
This is the XU?
Yep.
The XU, dear listener, is an alliance. What is an alliance, you say? Well, most of the time when you watch a reaction channel, and you should, by the way, like, share, comment, subscribe to other reaction channels, especially Nuclear Reactions. Why do you always laugh when I do that?
Because I told you, you don't even tell people to do that with our channel.
Oh, well, I mean, they're here. That's kind of overkill, don't you think? I mean, if they're here already, then anyway. Like, share, comment, subscribe to the other channels.
I'll just take my vitamins.
So, you'll notice that they'll chop the song up, every 30 seconds or so. There's a very smart reason they do that, because when you do that, then you get to have the full share of your fair share of the ad revenue that comes in. When you play the song all the way through, you get this nifty little email from Google. It's basically Google saying thank you very much for letting us run a commercial on your video, but the cut that you were going to get is not going to go to the band because you played the song all the way through. Now, we didn't figure that out until
it's too late.
It's too late to apologize, because everybody was like, no, we want you to play the songs all the way straight through. So Patreon idea came up to compensate for that, right? So that's why we do Patreon. So you jump in at the $1 level. There are different levels, and then there are different access points that you get. Like Sori and I are in a band with Jay and Peter and Yan, and so we're about to release whatever. You can hear the first 15 seconds if you're at a certain tier. Yada yada yada. But the main feature is you get to join an alliance, you pull your points together, and that helps determine what song we do. If you are a filthy capitalist like Sori, and you don't want to be part of an alliance, what you can do is the fast track option, 125 gets you straight to the head of the line. You do that 3 times, you go down to 75.
That's on Patreon or PayPal. The links are in the description on this video for that.
Vin and Sori merch at gmail.com. Speaking of which, speaking of filthy capitalists, my son, DL Beluga, has opened up a store on Amazon.com.
The link to that is also in the description.
Links in the description. Shoes, clothes are coming, those types of things. So if you need that stuff, there you go. Check out DL Beluga. There will be some contests around promoting that. I've already dropped a little hint of it on Instagram. You should follow us on Instagram, VinSori7. All right, having said that, Religiousuicide on song. Let's go.
Here we go.
Whoa. Bells.
Desolation, kiss of death, heaven never sin. Government taking silence, worthless to the end. Slave into the book of lies, fighting their disease. Praying through the sand of time, falling on his knees. Why to be the king of kings, wanting for the poor. Disciples at the head of my own to war. Killing in the name of God, hallowed be thy name. Criminal hypocrisy, crucified in shame. Sacraments of sacrifice. Anti-culture, anti-Christ. Hanging on the holy cross, judicious parasites. Religion takes it up the ass, it's Jesus fucking Christ. Blinded eyes to see the light and testimonies of hate. Self-destructing paradox must fall beyond your faith. Revelation testified, resurrection born. Mass seduction, suicide, mentality is torn. Churches fall across the land, chapels laid to rest. Gospel driven underground, faith becomes possessed. Speak around the 7 sins, advocate the priest. Children rape the dignity, romancing with the beast. Sacraments of sacrifice. Anti-culture, anti-Christ. Hanging on the holy cross, they name the priest twice. Religion takes it on the ass, it's Jesus fucking Christ.
You went too far.
Huh?
I said, you went too far.
Who went too far?
That line at the end. Well,
Why? What do you mean? What do you mean he went too far?
are you serious? Religion takes it up the... Jesus.
I'm trying to find this thing here. I had it in my feed, in one of my feeds, but it was basically the insurrectionists said a prayer before they stormed the Capitol building a couple days ago. I'm trying to find it. I'll find it eventually, inshallah. But they were saying a little prayer, and then they proceeded to go and try to dismantle our democracy. Look, we've talked about this on multiple occasions about taking God's name in vain, and what it means. The original Hebrew actually literally reads, "You shall not take the name of Yahweh your Elohim. You shall not turn the name of Yahweh Elohim to nothing."
Yep.
That's what it means. Is to turn the name to nothing. So what's crazy to me is there's obviously these things are meant to trigger people who are religious, and it's almost like a tired metal trope, like, oh, you have a problem with Jesus, how original. But there's a lot of Christians that will say this guy is taking Christ's name in vain because he said Jesus after Christ. Of course, I understand, but praying.
It's a disgusting play on, right? There's like a double in there?
Well, yeah.
Okay,
but
that's what I'm saying is too far.
Yeah, but even the play on words, like, Christ is not his last name.
I know, but for the uninitiated,
right.
They think that they're being clever, and it just shows their ignorance. I know that, but I still get what they were trying to do.
Well, the deeper thing for me, though, if you want to talk about ignorance, is you're praying to Christ before you go storm a Capitol building because your political messiah has been dethroned by a democratic process. Mm-hmm. Like, that is you're involving Christ in that. That is more blasphemous as far as bringing the name of God to nothing than this fella who doesn't really have, in my mind, a lot of, the intricacies of theology down is, whatever. That to me is using Christ's name in vain. Or Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son. It's not for law, but so Trump got impeached again.
Yeah. Surprise,
surprise.
Yeah.
And Franklin Graham wrote this big long thing about how Trump has been the most pro-life lie, blah, 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 blah. There are good things that Trump did, because everybody that watches Middle America knows that I'm not one of these anti-Trump people. Mm-hmm. I do believe he should pay for what happened on the 6th, though, and I don't believe he will. But, like... So Franklin Graham goes through all these good things that Trump did, and then he says there were 10 Republicans that voted in support of the impeachment, which was different from last time.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, this was the most bipartisan impeachment vote ever in the history of America. Yeah. So Franklin Graham goes on this crazy, and then he goes, I wonder how much pieces of silver Pelosi offered these people to do this to Trump. And I'm like, whoa, bro. Whoa. You just missed it.
Oh my God.
This is another way where you're taking the name of Christ in vain, or you brought the name of the Lord. You brought the name of the Lord to nothing, because now you're making some sort of correlation between Jesus Christ and Donald Trump. And you're doing that on Facebook, and it's like, So it's the irony of this whole thing is this guy believes that he's taking God's name in vain, when actually the bullshit that was presented by, I'm sorry, mostly white evangelicalism in the last 4 years, and this unconditional support of Trump, was the real blasphemous taking the name of Christ in vain or bringing it to nothing that created songs like this.
No, that's true. That's true.
Look.
That is a catalyst a lot of times.
Listen, what it was Romans 2 says, the name of the Lord is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. Mm-hmm. if you look at, which is why you're told, don't bring the name of the Lord your God to nothing, because the Israelite people were supposed to be a city on a hill where people were able to say, okay, this is what happens when you follow Yahweh. These are wise people. They have just laws, blah, blah, blah. Let's go and follow their God, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
So when you live and speak in such a way as to bring the name of the Lord to nothing, when you're supposed to be the city on a hill, then obviously that is a point of do not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Now, obviously, there's also a courtroom context of it as well, because you did not have cameras and DNA evidence. And so if you were charging somebody with a capital crime, you had to have 2 or 3 witnesses, and those witnesses would swear before Yahweh that what they're saying is true. Right? So like the Achan thing where they say, give glory to God, blah, 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 blah. It's a way of swearing yourself in, right? So there's that to it too. So there's 2 sides to the whole, in the context of the 10 commandments of not using the name of the Lord your God in vain. Yeah. But look, during the 1st century, we had no political power. We essentially had no money. And we were getting slaughtered for sport in the arena and literally the circus. Yeah. We were getting dipped in tar and crucified. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. We were dipped in tar and crucified upside down.
Yeah.
And we suffered so well that Tacitus, who hated Christians, records that even the people were like, "Hey, show mercy to these people." Yeah. Right? And the Christianity exploded mainly among slaves and soldiers. Yeah. Because of the way that we died.
Yeah, I was thinking about...
And we had no power.
That story with Perpetua.
Right. We had no power to leverage anything. And we won people over by walking the extra mile with the evil Roman soldier, or dying well, or Christian women, when they would leave the babies out in the town square for exposure, Christian women would circle back and get them, baptize them, and then, we won people over by our willingness to take a powerless position in society. Yeah. And then the 4th century hit, and subhanAllah, I don't think the Western world has ever really recovered from it. We were able to, get in bed with the government, literally in some aspects, and Western Christianity, especially American Christianity, if there's any indicator that we've completely lost our way, it's this unconditional support of Donald Trump. It is insane. And look, again, go to the Middle America page. You'll see when Trump does something well, like the First Step Act and things like that, we give him credit for it. Right. But there's a lot of things that this man did and said that are just completely incompatible with a Christian worldview. And and like I said, like if you had, one of the things that blows my mind is people's, Skip Bayless coined this term, prisoner of the moment. So it's like, Christians are looking at this guy Trump like he's some sort of messianic figure, but he's running around with porn stars, cheating on his wife, all these types of things, saying horrible things to these women online, and all these types of things. And the world is watching it, and they're like, "Holy shit, this guy's a scumbag." And then we come along and go, "Yeah, but I mean, he's our guy." And then, but then people, like, if you have any sort of memory, and you remember how the Christian right responded to Bill Clinton for his very horrible taking advantage of this 19-year-old intern, and the fact that he lied, like it was like the end of the world, like the apocalypse this was a sign of the end times.
Why
and all
is that?
But then Trump comes along,
that is
and
weird.
You're completely fine. Well, Clinton was a Democrat, Trump ran as a Republican,
oh my gosh,
and he was running against Hillary Clinton. End of story.
That's really ridiculous.
End of story.
Wow. Okay.
And people in this band are watching it going, "Oh man, you guys." Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So you've already blasphemed Christ by throwing out your full-throated support for this guy. Yeah. So now he says that this is, I'll tell you what, at the judgment, that prayer before they went and stormed the Capitol, believe me, is going to be judged way more severely than this. Now, God is going to judge this unless this guy repents from a Christian worldview. For sure. Right. Because you can't blame your sin on other people. However, Jesus does say that the one who causes the other person to sin is guilty of a greater sin and is going to be judged more severely. That's just a fact. So, people who should know better are completely destroying. And then, of course, there's the whole Trump prophecy nonsense, where you had these people prophesying that Donald Trump was going to remain the president and all this other nonsense, which, you know, is one of those things where there's no way that that's going to have any sort of convincing power to anybody, because, okay, the first time there is one guy that prophesied that Trump would be president like 2 years before 2016. That I go, okay,
Yeah,
that's pretty big. But Trump getting reelected, look, if it wasn't for COVID, he'd absolutely have gotten reelected. So it's like, what are you really winning by even making that prophecy public? And then you had what's her face calling in the slave angels from Africa.
Paula
White, aptly named. Like, it was just a horrible moment for Christianity, man.
Yeah.
It's a terrible situation. And I don't, you know, anti-cult or anti-Christ, like, you have to, I got this friend, this semi-famous Catholic friend, and since 2 years ago, he's been calling it the cult. I'm like, that is completely, you know, uncharitable, blah, blah, blah. And I still think it is uncharitable for the vast majority of people who voted for Trump. But
there is certainly a group that could be
there is
very
certainly a group within that group that are absolutely cultish, and some of these people are very powerful, influential people. It's mind-boggling to me. It's mind-boggling to me. And like, there are certain things where, you know, I'm not going to get into it, but like, there are certain people. Yeah, I'm going to skip that one. Yeah, okay. So like, I don't know, you know, I mean, this could be the typical, we hate Christians, blah, 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 but this was written in 2020, you know, and so I gotta believe, maybe even at the subliminal level, that there's some Trump here. Desolation, kiss of death, heaven will send, God forsaken, Sodom is worthless to the end. Slave unto the book of lies, spreading the disease, praying through the sands of times, crawling. You know what's funny is, like, there's a lot of judgment in this song, but they're mad at Christians for being holier than thou. Wait a minute.
Pause for a second.
This is one of the blind spots that people. It's like when people say there's no such thing as absolute truth.
So is that an absolute?
And, you know, I absolutely sure. I was talking to it wasn't really a debate. I was talking to this atheist one time, and he was trying to say that the doctrine of original sin was disproven by the concept of sociopathy because it's a mental illness or whatever. It was a very convoluted argument.
Okay.
This is a guy who thought he was very intelligent, wasn't very intelligent. This was a guy that was like, yeah, everybody says that I'm well read, and I was like, I know you're not well read because the stuff you say is very basic.
Yeah.
So he was trying. Yeah.
He did something with his eyes.
There's always some black on black crime too. He's mad at me. Come see me. You know where I live, bro.
Oh boy.
Nah, he doesn't know where I live. But he was like, you know, trying to make this very complex argument, like the doctrine of original sin is against science, because basically he was arguing that sociopaths don't know that what they're doing is wrong. And I said, well, no, that's not what's happening with a sociopath. They know what they're doing is wrong. It's they don't feel any guilt about it before or after. There isn't that emotional tug at the beginning that say we shouldn't do this, and there isn't the emotional fallout after that says we shouldn't have done this. That's all the sociopath is. But he knows it's wrong. So he's going back and forth, and I said, well, wait a second. I said, and he was all chuckling and stuff. I said, aren't you an atheist? He goes, yeah. And I said, there's no such thing as objective right or wrong. He goes, I know that. And I said, so then how could you say somebody's a sociopath in the first place? Because there's another atheist guy who is a moral realist. I'm not going to get into it, but basically, he's an atheist that believes that there's actual objective moral right and wrong. He just doesn't know where where it comes from.
Okay.
But he's just a moral realist. He just thinks it's this guy was saying, no, there's no such thing as a. So I said, how can you call somebody a sociopath? Because the entire thing about a sociopath is they do the wrong thing, but they don't have a conscience. Well, if there is no objective right or wrong, then there can be nobody's a sociopath.
Right.
The very idea that there's something called a sociopath means that all of us believes that there is a right and wrong, and that you're a bad person if you don't feel bad about it.
That's true.
That's what that means.
That's true. Well, that's why I think you want to switch it.
And that's why when you call somebody a sociopath, you're trying to insult them. Yeah. That's a moral judgment. So when Jimmy Dore rightly points out that a lot of these politicians are sociopathic because they know that they are passing laws that's going to result in the death of hundreds of thousands of Americans over a decade with this healthcare stuff, he's rightly pointing out, you guys are completely sociopathic because they know that horrors are going to befall people, but they don't care because it gets them more money and power. So that is assuming a standard.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the beneficial things about the Trump administration is it has completely and totally ended moral relativism. This whole thing where people are like, well, you believe what you believe, I believe that. Now it's like, nope.
Yep.
If you believe that, you're a horrible person. Even before you do the action. Because before it used to be, you can believe whatever you want, as long as you don't do something that impedes my little... But now it's like, even if you believe that shit, you're a bad person. Which is what the Bible says, is that you're not only a good or a bad person because of what you do, but you're a good or bad person because of why you do what you do. And so Trump has completely eliminated moral relativism. So now we're on a ground where, Twitter came out yesterday, I forgot the guy's name, and he basically says, no, we're not neutral. And if you don't like the fact that we're blocking these people, then get out. Which is hilarious because that is what right-wingers say all the time. Yeah. You don't like the fact that we don't want to serve this gay wedding? Fuck out. Go make your own gay. Well, okay, good. So now it's happening to them, and they're all up in arms and all the rest of it. But he came out and says no, and the Facebook guy came out, the Twitter guy. He said no, we're not neutral. I love that. I was on the Ben Shapiro little thing, and they're like, he admits that he isn't neutral. Of course, this is what presuppositionalists have been saying from the beginning. Nobody's neutral. There's no such thing as neutrality. Neutrality is impossible. So, conversions are possible, but there's no such thing as neutrality, especially when it comes to these hot button issues. Forget it. It's ridiculous. And I love the fact about this song that these guys are taking a moral stake, and yes, they contradict themselves because they're angry at Christians for judging them being holier than thou, but they're judging them for being judgmental, which is obviously a contradiction. But this is what Trump has done in this country.
Yeah,
he
but
has
at the
been
same time,
al-Furqan, as the Muslims say.
The reason that people will say holier than thou is because Christians come off like they're altogether perfect. Like these other people are like, I'm not trying to say that we're perfect, so we can point out a flaw without it being some big thing.
Well, these guys are not saying, hey, I'm a horrible sinner too. They're sitting in judgment of these people. I mean, that's just a fact. And, biblical anthropology says that look, nobody likes being told that they're doing the wrong thing. Period.
Amen.
So Christians are going to listen to this song, and they're going to get very defensive, and they're going to say, this isn't true, this is hyperbolized, blah, 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 blah. The guy's talking about child rape and things like that. Well, it's a fact.
Yeah, I know.
It's a fact. In the Roman Catholic Church, these kids have been raped for generations. Those are facts. And then John Paul II, who got sainted almost immediately, sent these guys to different parishes and all the rest of it, and paid those kids off under the table and kept it moving like nothing was going on. Meanwhile, these priests were devouring these children. Those are facts.
I don't see how he wasn't doing stuff to kids himself. Why would you protect these people?
Well, because the institution, I mean, you hear it a lot. It's very, and this is, I very rarely, make the line of demarcation with, well, we have to be very, very careful about accusing people of that stuff, which is completely speculative.
Oh, it's speculative, but
Like,
you're
we
a
don't-
horrible,
we don't get to do that.
disgusting
Like,
person
right, that's-
for participating in protecting these pedophiles from those kids.
No, that's
and I
fine.
don't have any problem saying, why are you so good to protect them?
Well, I'm going to explain in a second, but I think there's a very rational explanation, but it's very important that we don't just willy-nilly throw that stuff out against people when we don't have any proof.
Well, you can be
well,
the moral person, but no.
No, we don't get to do that. You don't get
You can make that decision for yourself.
No, well, are you a
I-
Christian?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's...
Oh, as a Christian, you shouldn't do that. I agree.
Okay, so there's false witness.
So when you say we, yeah.
There's
Okay, as
false
Christians,
witness.
no, we shouldn't do it.
There's false witness, there's slander, so we can't do that. We know definitively he said... But here's my point. You hear this a lot with when I go on a Roman Catholic station versus a Protestant station. A Protestant station will talk about bringing you to Christ. The Catholic station will talk about bringing you to the church. So the institution is more important to Catholics than it is to Protestants, and Protestants can't even... Because Protestantism, if you have a problem with the church, you just go to another church. But in Catholicism, you don't go to another... I mean, you saw what happened with King Henry. He didn't just go to... He cut the girl's head off because it was about the institution, right? So I completely understand why JP2 did that. He did that because he was protecting the institution, because the institution is the most important thing to him, obviously, over these kids. And even though we're Protestants, they're still within the rubric of Christianity. You know what I mean? Like, whether or not I believe that the Pope is an actual Christian, I don't, generally. Anybody that says that they're the vicar of Christ on earth and the king of heaven, earth, and hell, you know, with the tripartite crown, anybody that walks around saying that, I'm sorry, you're out. But as a whole, Catholicism is part of Christianity. So we did that in the sense of we Christians participated in that type of system. And you cannot... And here's the other thing. The same thing happens in Protestant churches. The numbers are not as high, but they're in the neighborhood. And if you want to talk about sexual deviancies and sexual assaults in the Protestant context, we know for a fact that Protestants are not very good at protecting children or women from sexual assault.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that Protestants go out of their way to... I mean, we've seen it with our own eyes. They cover this shit up for the child molester. And they put, you know, after the... I'm not going to go back into the story. So, like, these criticisms are accurate criticisms that you have got to own. And I do think there is a higher standard for us, because we're saying we're representing the greatest human being that's ever walked on the planet, you know, Jesus of Nazareth. So there's a higher standard for us. So we can't say, well, you guys do it too. Like, we're saying that we're the city on the hill. So you have to. See, look, it says, advocate the priest, children raped in dignity, romancing with the beast. Which, you know, again, this is probably talking about, I mean, I doubt that this guy takes a preterist interpretation of Revelation, where the woman riding the beast is talking about what happens when religion, you know, begins to cohere with politics and the compromises that happen because of that.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming the beast here would be Trump, and you have to agree that that's what happened, that the church commiserated with this beast of a man. And when I say beast, I don't mean to... The way that this man comported himself was beneath his dignity as an image bearer of God. The stuff that he said, going after those women on Twitter, is beneath his dignity. And it was a beast.
You went after women on Twitter?
What do you mean? Yeah, of course. That girl... Stormy Daniels and all that. He called her horse face and all this other craziness. It was just unbelievable, and we stood right by him. And then, you know, the Christians were like, well, you know, I don't agree with everything he says. It's like, if somebody said that to your daughter, like called your daughter a whore and horse face and all this stuff in front of 88 million people, would you just say that? Like, oh yeah, I don't agree with everything he said. Like
Yeah.
The draw of political power that Trump, because you had his office filled with people praying for him, and Paula White was his pastor, so he gave all this access to evangelicals or whatever. It was particularly evangelicals.
Oh, I didn't know Paula White was his pastor.
Oh, yeah. That's why she was sending all the angels and all that stuff, because she has a stake in it, because if he remains president, she remains the pastor of the president. She's the one that converted him in the Oval Office and all this craziness. Oh, yeah. She was saying he's a baby Christian and all this and that. And so, of course, she wants him reelected. So, like, this draw of power and notoriety that Trump had with all these evangelicals, we fell for it hook, line, and sinker. And we spent the last 4 years taking the name of Christ in vain in this current situation that we're in. And I do not mean that if you voted for Trump, you took Christ's name in vain. I don't even mean that if you voted for Trump the second time, you took Christ's name in vain. Because voting for Biden is not a good option, especially for black people. We know that. What I mean is the refusal to publicly criticize him is taking the name in vain. And then when you're confronted with his errors and with his atrocities, you just go, yeah, I don't agree with everything he says. Meanwhile, we all watched you with Clinton. We watched you with Obama. We watched how you were.
Yeah.
Particularly with Obama, who had a basically flawless record as far as how he managed his sexuality and his marriage. Flawless, and you had nothing good to say about this man. And then you got this guy, and you're able to just, the race stuff. It was just a horrible look for evangelicals for the last 4 years. It's been terrible. Terrible stuff. And then, of course, it culminated in they had a little quick prayer, and then off they went into the Capitol. And, I've been looking at these Christian, in reality, they're white nationalists, but they're Christian nationalists. And I'm watching this guy, I forgot what the guy's name was, but he was talking about, after the Capitol, how violence is a tool that needs to be used to fight tyranny, and how our forefathers, his forefathers, used violence, and the only people that are against violence are comfortable people who are cowardly and all that, blah, blah, blah. Just insane stuff from Christians. And I'm just watching this like, holy shit. These poor people, my atheist friends don't stand a chance looking at anything relatively Christian when the main guys are just complete white nationalists who are just unbelievable. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. I thought they got their point across. It's a little hypocritical because they're judging people for being judgmental, and this is a completely, one-sided thing. But I also understand where a lot of this is coming from. Because it's been a horrible look, and hopefully now, Biden can, Biden is such a milquetoast Democrat, corporate Democrat, that he's basically a Republican in the 90s. There's nothing progressive. So I don't really think there's going to be a massive response to Biden by the evangelical right. Now, there will be if something happens to Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris comes in. There will be a massive response from Ms. Harris, and do what you will with that dichotomy and try to figure out where that variable is. Having said that,
I like the sound of it, though.
The song was heavy, was extremely aggressive. I'm gonna pray. I'm gonna pray for these brothers because blasphemy is not a small thing.
Nope.
So, I think that if Jesus is right and if Jesus is true, then Jesus warned, and the first warning was to religious people. He says, every idle word, you will have to answer for every idle word on the day of judgment. Right. And so, that's something to think through, And the other thing that's really interesting to me is, in this current day and age that we're in, there is this sort of, you hear it more on the left. You try not to trigger people, or you try not to go after things that are sacred and important to people. because we're trying to all be like trying to figure out on this planet. But for some reason, and this is not a complaint for me, because nobody's taking us to court. We've had to go to court because of our faith, and we've had to do depositions and all that, and we don't talk about it a lot because I just think that nothing happened to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, nothing happened to me or anybody I love, so, I mean, it wasn't really persecution. You had to go to a deposition. I mean, really, I'll tell you the worst thing about having to go to the deposition to stand up for our faith was the fact that I had to wake up early. Because the thing was like at 9 o'clock, so I had to wake up at like 7:30 and drive over there. That bugged me a lot. I was really upset about that. But I enjoyed the jousting session with the attorneys for the state attorneys. I enjoyed that immensely.
Yeah.
And so did our attorney. But like, it's very interesting that, like, if there's a Christian band that said, "You faggots," blah 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 blah, it would be the end of the world, and But then you can come and like just throw shit on like the most important thing to billions of people, and that's okay. Yep. Or like the "Kill the Christian" song that we reviewed like way back. And I would just simply say, even outside of the Christian, it's like why is that good to do? Like what does that get you? Yeah. Me personally, like, as a person who actually believes this stuff and believes it's real, I don't get angry at these folks because of what we've just been talking about for 45 minutes. I do pause at times and be like, man, if this Jesus stuff is real, bro, he said all that shit, that's gonna be a tough conversation, bro. And so that's something where I would encourage people to pause and be like, oh, think about what you're doing. On the human side, you know, it's called collateral damage. Like when you're going to war, and you end up hitting people that you don't intend. You harm people that you don't intend to harm. Right? That's collateral damage. So a lot of times in the metal community, like, people have been so hurt by the church, but it's by the church, and so they just go, and then, you know, there's a whole bunch of people that get hit with shrapnel that are good folks, and they just so this Christians are like one of the few only groups that you're allowed to continue to do that.
To snipe them, but you
can still do that to. And of course, what I would say is, you know, it just depends, right? Like, if it's American Christians, I'll say, well, deal with it, right? But like right now, there's some kid in Uganda who's making a decision between his head and his Jesus, and so that's something that has to be dealt with. And of course, you know, he brings up the big atheist thing, and we already know how we've seen atheist states. It's called militant state atheism, and a lot of my atheist friends are in absolute denial. They say atheism had nothing to do with Yarlowski's pogroms against religious people.
He said himself.
The thing is literally called the League of the Militant Godless. Yeah. No. They're like, that had nothing to do with atheism. It was communism. So then I quote Yarlowski, right, where he says that the reason that their communist revolution worked and others failed was because their revolution was permeated with the spirit of militant atheism. This is a fact. It's not an opinion. So the real issue isn't necessarily Christianity or atheism. The real issue is when human beings get in power and they control the skids, people end up getting hurt. Yep. And so there's that. But heavy. The song is heavy as hell, literally. The heavy song, and I think I wish I'm gonna send this probably to a Christian or two and be like,
"What do you think?
What do you think?"
Which two Christians would that be? I am super curious.
What do you give the song?
Oh boy. I don't like the offensive nature of it. I understand where you're coming from, as far as, you know, like we've created an environment in which a song like this would be necessary for people to sing and say, you know. I'm still disappointed that we've created that environment. The sound of it was good. It was catchy. It was kind of like that Clawfinger song that we did.
The nigger one.
Where I was like all of a sudden, like partway through the reaction, I'm like getting into it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And this one was kind of like one of those. I was like, I can't. So I don't know. I guess a 7.9.
I'm gonna have to give it a 9.4. They said a lot, and this review could have went for 5 hours. And anytime somebody has a lot of lyrics, I respect the hell out of that. So there you are, dear listener. The moral of the story is just be kind to each other and you know, be self-aware of your movement. Then out.
Shout out to the Extreme Underground. Sori out.
Gone.